Hello and welcome back to Occupy Zero. My name is Lewis and I'll be your host for this video. I think this one is probably going to be a little bit longer just because I have a location that I'm driving to, and so I've got a little more time to talk about what this protest is, where the idea came from, and really what I'm trying to accomplish by getting people involved in Occupy Zero. Whatever protesting people are doing, keep doing it. Whatever signs you're making, keep making them. Whatever photographs you can get taken of your movement, keep doing it. I'm not here to try and take over somebody else's protest. This is in addition to all of the tools that you already have. And this person wants to get over, but they don't want to actually go. Drivers. And of course we hit the red light because they didn't want to make a move. So that should be a point right there. That should be a lesson. Make a move. You know, I've been watching the political situation in this country since Ronald Reagan. I was politically aware at 10 years old. I understood who the parties were. I understood what was going on. I understood, you know, the big bad USSR, the Cold War, and you know, I spent hours and hours upon hours reading history books, reading encyclopedias, reading articles. This is before the internet. This is before the internet. We used to have things called encyclopedias, and if you wanted to learn about something, you bought one. Or books. Those are other amazing things you can learn from that you don't require electronics for. And so, having watched this downward slide that I've been watching since 1980, and actually I have to take it back to when I was born, because we can't complete a discussion about corporate takeover of the United States of America without talking about Richard Nixon. And we can't talk about oppression, injustice, racial injustice, and violence against our citizens. We declared a war on, well, we didn't declare a war on drugs. Our government declared a war on drugs. And by virtue of that, our police departments declared war on us. It strikes me as completely insane that here we are in the year 2021 and people still haven't figured out where all of this racism and violence comes from. And it comes from the war on drugs. We decided to treat a public health problem as a criminal justice issue. That is why we kill black people. That is why we kill brown people. That is why Asians are getting their faces busted in. Because this racism is systemic. It exists at every level of our society, from the very bottom straight to the very top. Racism. And the war on drugs, I mean, basically, you know, the way I view it, because we all know, and any of us who's done any research on the war on drugs knows that chemical companies were directly involved in the war, because I'll just give you some math here. In order to manufacture cocaine, you need acetone. And acetone at the time, back in the 1980s and 1990s, cost $50 a barrel on the open market. That means that if the chemical company sells one barrel, they're going to make $50. If you sell the same barrel of acetone to the Colombian drug cartels, or to the Peruvian drug cartels, or the Mexican drug cartels, they're going to spend $5,000 a barrel. So even before you've got to the illegal drugs, you already have a scam going, and it's from corporations. You want to know where all the cocaine comes from? You could thank the chemical companies, because they're in on it. And nothing has changed, nothing has gone away since the war on drugs was declared in 1970. And then they kicked it up a notch in the early 1980s, and then they really kicked it up a notch when George Herbert Walker Bush, former director of the Central Intelligence Agency, became president. He knew all about the drug cartels. They helped set him up. What Americans don't understand about your history will come back and bite you on your ass. You need to understand history. You need to understand the history of this country. And so I started digging and digging and digging. And I'm always asking the question, why? You know, because when I smoked pot for the first time, it was actually a really amazing experience. My grades went up in school when I started smoking pot. Because I have a mental illness, and because marijuana interacts with that in such a way that it makes me normal. I tried telling people this when I was a kid. You know what they did? They turned around and arrested me and threw me in a lockdown treatment facility for 2 months with adult drug-addicted patients. And the bad part about it is that for 3 of those weeks, they send you out into the middle of nowhere, marching you 132 miles through sub-zero temperatures. I almost lost fingers and toes from the frostbite. Folks, this is not business as usual for anybody. For me, this is fucking personal. It's personal, and it's been personal since 1987. The actions that our federal government has taken against the citizens of the United States of America is inexcusable, it is reprehensible, and it's disgusting. In fact, there aren't enough words in the English language or enough F's in the English language to describe how I feel about this. There's no way. There's no way. And the people at the top, the ruling class, have worked overtime for the last 100 years to pass every single piece of legislation possible to keep you under control. That's what the laws are there for. They're not there to protect you. They're there to protect rich people from you. That's why they exist. That's why police forces exist. You ever see the cops raiding rich people's houses? Not unless they're throwing a big ass party. No, it's usually somebody poor who's got nothing. Yeah, so I have a lot of strong feelings. I mean, if you want to go back to the time of Jesus, he said you could sooner pass a camel through the eye of a needle than have a rich man enter the kingdom of God. You know, that shit was true 2,000 years ago, and it's true today. It is true today. And, you know, I've watched as people have come and parties have come and parties have gone. The closest that we ever got to having some actual representation in our government was a man who was a conservative, who I happen to support, even though I'm a liberal. I supported him, and his name was Ross Perot. And Ross Perot got on television. I'll never forget this. He got on television, you can probably look this up, with Larry King and with Al Gore. I think Al Gore, trying to remember, I think he was still a senator at that point. I think this was before the 1992 election. No, of course it was. It was before that, because Ross Perot dropped out. And if you want to know why Ross Perot dropped out, it's because people identifying themselves as Republicans called and made death threats to Ross Perot. They said, if you don't drop out of the race, we're going to kill your daughter. And you don't think evil people rule this fucking planet? Excuse my French. What do you think all that stuff is about with, you know, Ghislaine Maxwell and Prince Andrew and, what's his name? Jeffrey Epstein, who absolutely did not kill himself. He was murdered in his jail cell. That's what happened. All you have to do is take a cursory look over the evidence, and you already know that's what happened. Anybody who knows anything about holding cells knows there's nothing to hang yourself from. So why does all this stuff go on? It's to get rich people. It's all about control. That's what the whole thing is about. It's all about control. And it isn't about representation in government at all. And I posted this on my site, and I'm going to keep recommending people just look up U.S. oligarchy study. That's all you have to do is look up U.S. oligarchy study and read. And what you will find is that there was a policy study conducted that looked at 1,800 policy issues over 20 years. And what they found out is that individuals like you and me, or mass-based organizations like the ACLU, have almost no independent impact on policy, while billionaires, big businessmen, and bankers have almost exclusive rights to pass legislation in their favor. This is not a democracy. It's not even a republic. We live in an oligarchy that controls an empire. We've turned into the bad guys now, unfortunately. We've turned into the bad guys. The very guys that we fought against in World War II, the Nazis, we took everything that the Nazis did and we replicated it in the United States of America. You are living in the corporate fascist states of America. And once you recognize that fact, once you recognize that there is no reforming the system, there is no reforming our political parties, something has to be done outside of the scope of government and big business. And the only people that leaves is people like you and people like me. And the only tools that we have at our disposal are either to get riled up and go out there and protest and shove signs in people's faces, or they expect that. That's why they just throw the police at us and shoot us with water cannons and frickin' tear gas. You know, it's easy enough to break up a protest. All you do is get rid of the news helicopters. Once the news is gone, the protest is gone, because nobody's gonna see it. I watched Occupy Wall Street, but I watched it on the internet. I watched it from people who are there. I watched it from other people's cell phone videos. None of the stuff that I saw on the internet ever made it to television. And the sad part about it is that what happened to the Occupy Wall Street protests is the same as what's happened to all of the Occupy protests. The public authorities simply wait you out. Sooner or later, it's going to come down to a public bathroom issue, or it's going to be misuse of a transit facility, or some other bullshit that they could use to get you to move along. Time to move along. You've had your protest now. You've got to say all the horrible things that you want to say about us. Now you got to go away. You got to go away now and go back to your shitty life that we made up for you in the first place, says the ruling class. They don't care. Yeah, they don't care. You can get out there with 10 million pink hats. They don't care. And if they do say that they represent you, it's only because it's a matter of convenience. The Democrats didn't start the LGBTQ movement. Stonewall did. People getting out and protesting started that movement for gay rights. The Democrats just co-opted it. In fact, every social issue, abortion, you name it, all the Democrats have done is co-opted the issue and convinced you that they're better than the Republicans when it comes to deciding policy. These two parties work overtime to make us believe, because it is that, it's make-believe, to make us believe that they actually hate each other's guts and are totally principally opposed to one another. And that's not true. That's not true, because when it comes to every major piece of legislation that usually screws over the average American person, both parties are needed to pass. It's very rare. We have a unique situation right now where the Democrats control the House, the Senate, and the presidency. That's a very rare situation. Most of the time, you have to play ball with the other side if you're going to get anything done, and they do. The question is, what laws are they passing? What laws are they passing, and who do those laws benefit? It's not the average American, not most of the time, not according to the Princeton study. No. It's a charade. And the cheating doesn't go on in the general election. I'm sorry, Trump, but stop the steal is bullshit. There wasn't a steal. You know where the steal was? The steal was in the primaries. That's where the steal happens, because every time you start out a presidential field, you got what, 15, 20 people in the race? That's good. That's choice. That's called choice. But it isn't, because the Democrats have these people called superdelegates that have the ability to override the vote of the general Democratic people that support the Democrats. They don't care who you want. They're going to pick who they want. And who they want is who the ruling class wants. That's how it works. How much say do you have in government? Nothing. Reform doesn't work. Pleading and begging doesn't work. Protesting doesn't work. Getting violent and storming the Capitol does not work. You saw what happened when the right-wingers stormed the Capitol building. Did they take our government back and restore the Constitution? No. They got rounded up and arrested, and a lot of them are going to go to prison for threatening and or killing people or beating people violently. So what do you get with a violent protest like that? Nothing. Nothing. As soon as they cleared the building, they went back to the vote. It amounted to nothing. It was impressive looking, but it amounted to nothing except people getting hurt. So there's your violent, and if you think that violence with guns is going to be any more effective, I think you're on a fool's errand, is what they call it. No, this has taken a lot of time and a lot of thought. The only threat to a capitalist system, the biggest threat, is simply not participating. That is the biggest threat, because they consider a good economy to be when 95% of the people are employed. In other words, everybody's busy, everybody's got a job. But if 70% of American workers hate the job that they work at, I hardly call that a success. And when the bottom 80% of America only controls 7% of the wealth, when we used to control 15%, from 1980 until now, they've stolen 50% of the money from the middle class and the working poor. Who's they? The ruling class, whatever you want to call them. Bankers, billionaires, businessmen, and all of their friends in a club that you are not a part of, in a club that I am not a part of. And I wouldn't have as big a problem with these people trying to control the fucking world if I'd actually elected them to do so, which I did not, and neither did you. So, yeah, we're getting close to 20 minutes here, so I think I'm gonna wrap this up. We've tried all of the other things. Let's try this. Let's try this. And the other inspiration for the dropout and do nothing, the do nothing revolt, it comes from the 1960s, when the hippies told people, turn off the goddamn television, the revolution will not be televised. They told people that back in the 1960s. And you know what? A lot of people tuned in and a lot of people dropped out. And you know what it did? It scared the shit out of our government, which is why they started the war on drugs. Because they wanted to shut up all the hippies and all of the protesters and everybody else who was out there. So let's give this a try. Let's give this a try. And if we're not successful this year, we can do it again next year. Let's give this a try. Give it a fair chance. All right, I've arrived at my destination, so I have to go. Hope you folks have a fantastic evening, and I'll be back soon.